This is the radio guide of Dr. Mike Prince. Of course, we come to you each and every day on the Open Mic Broadcast Network. As promised, we are able to deliver today, and I might say what a rejoicing time it is for us here on the Mike Prince Show to be sitting right across from none other than Dr. Ruth Simmons of Prairie View A&M University. Hello, Dr. Simmons, and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, and hello, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well. It has been, as they say, a long time coming. I'm pretty sure you're familiar with Sam Cooke, the original version of a long
Yes.
time coming. But we're mighty glad that you're taking time out to sit down and meet with us on
Happy
today.
to do it.
Yes, ma'am. Now, of course, I want to say congratulations for being the first African American president, female gender, for Prairie View. I know you've been through that already, but it's got to be a proud moment for you. And one thing that I've learned about when you're making history, you don't look at it until you sit back and someone brings it to your attention.
Yes, I think that's true. Or you become aware of the import long after you finish the assignment, really, because in the moment you're more concerned about doing the job, fulfilling the mission. So I tend to think more about what I'm here to do, not the historical phenomenon of being the first woman.
Absolutely. Now,
Yeah.
you walk right into the first question. You're actually seasoned at this. When you say your assignment or what it is you were brought here or sent here to do, how would you summarize that? What is the core of Dr. Ruth Simmons being at Prairie View?
Well, I think it's frankly no different from what I've been asked to do as a university president. This is my third presidency, and that is typically when you start a tenure as a president, you're not given specific assignments, but rather the board tends to say there is a main mission for the university, and you need as president to see that mission is fulfilled in the best possible way. So it's just that vague. And so typically what you do is you come in and then you look under everything to see what the issues are. What does the university actually need? And the first step is really to listen to people. So my first term here, I was busy talking to people, talking to alumni to hear about their concerns, talking with students to see what they thought was most needed to make their education what it needed to be, talking with policymakers, talking with people in the community. So you take all of that in, and then think about what the total picture is in relationship to what you think a higher education institution needs to do, and then you begin to formulate what the roadmap is for the university.
Okay, so for summary aspect, you were sent on an assignment and they said figure this thing out the best way you can.
Yes. Okay, good. Yes, yes, exactly.
Okay, so with that being said, and I can understand, you have people pulling at you 100 miles an hour from each direction, and you're trying to figure out what's what, who's who, and what exactly will fit. Because what works in one area might not work in another area. So when you go through the course of figuring that out, here at the Open Mic Broadcast Network, I have made it a policy, believe it or not, as active as I am from the political aspect, I try to stay away from political concerns. I think the purest form for me is athletics because athletics can tie in so much with going into where we need to go as a university, how we need to go as a community, even as a people from that point. And speaking of people, you have some lineage here at Prairie View. That's no secret. The Stubblefield family had a brother had a successful basketball career here. So I guess my first question to you would be, what is your viewpoint on athletics in relationship to the university?
Well, this is a very important question, particularly in this country. For people who are not familiar with the way that education is organized around the world, I often describe to my peers in other countries how different we are in this country from that vantage point. In other words, for a very long period of time, athletics has been at the center of what we do, particularly at the undergraduate level. We have thought that in order to form holistically a student, that they need to have excellent coursework, excellent social environment, excellent teachers, and excellent opportunities to engage physically in competition with others. And so that's kind of a bedrock element of American higher education, frankly. Now, in terms of my own brother and what I've observed, and I should say very clearly that the reason that I'm here at Prairie View is because my brother was here. Okay.
Okay.
And that is to say, when I retired from my career, and the opportunity came up to fill this role, of course I thought, well, no, of course not, because I'm retired. Why would I do that? And it was my brother who said to me, "This is something that you must do." And he talked to me about that from his experience and seeing his passion for Prairie View and for what it did for him. Now, when we were growing up, I mean, as a sister, a younger sister, I thought he was pretty incorrigible, frankly. And here is this institution, this wonderful institution, Prairie View, who took him and nurtured him and turned him into something. And I thought, well, that's remarkable because this person that I knew growing up, who seemed a little aimless and so forth, who loved basketball, and who was, he was so committed to basketball that we all thought he was over the edge, frankly, because that's how much he loved basketball. I had another brother, Reuben, who was just ahead of him in school and played basketball also at Wheatley, and he was more balanced. And basketball was not everything to him, but to Clarence it was everything. And so the way that Prairie View molded him, took him as an athlete, but added a dimension to him that was wonderful. So today, when I look at him and I think, here's someone who expresses himself well. He's still stubborn, but here's somebody who expresses himself well, somebody who has been committed to his athletes that he's coached across a long period of time, someone who has made a contribution to our community here in this region, and I'm very proud of that. So the first thing I did when I got to Prairie View, being overwhelmed by what Prairie View did for him, I established a scholarship in his name because that's my thanks to Prairie View for what they did for this athlete.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, would it be safe to assume, with that being said, that athletics had a significance, but maybe not as much of a significance that you were aware of until you got here to Prairie View?
Well, of course, every institution that I've been involved in had athletics was very important in every institution I've been involved with. I started early in my career, I was at USC, okay, where athletics dominates, okay, and I went from USC to Princeton, where again athletics dominates. So I've been all along involved with institutions where athletics occupies a very, very important and central role. And so my relationship to Prairie View before I came was through athletics, because going to see my brother play and knowing about the success of that Zelmo Beatty team and so forth, that was a great source of pride for me, and that's how I saw Prairie View through the lens of basketball at Prairie View. because didn't have any other associations with the university. So I knew coming into Prairie View that that was going to be an important element of my leadership here, is making sure that that tradition continued strong.
Absolutely. We're talking right now with Dr. Ruth Simmons on the Mike Prince Show. We're talking about Prairie View, the connection by the bloodline. And for those who just joined in, she's taking a couple of pot shots at her older brother Clarence Stubblefield, but we won't harp on that too long. Now, you spoke about how USC was a dominant factor with athletics.
Yes.
Princeton the same way. And then you go on into the private sector where there's a little bit more control from the academia side. And does that give you a balanced approach on how to view this thing when it comes to athletics here at Prairie View?
I don't think it's. See, I've never seen that as in any way inconsistent. I don't think there is any
Hmm.
competition really
Hmm.
between athletics and academics. And uh, and as I said before, one of the marvelous things, I have a student from Brown who was a great basketball star, who has gone on to be an investment banker. And what we know is that some athletes will go on to further their career in professional sports, but some of them will go on to do other kinds of things. And so, to me, what is vital is that we make sure that every student, and including athletes, have the background that allows them to go in different directions. One of the great experiences of my life was to work with Magic Johnson, and Magic Johnson is a phenomenon. He is, obviously people know him as an outstanding former basketball player, but when you see him in action today, as a business person, as a community leader, as a person who is helping to shape industry, it's a phenomenal thing, because you know that a big part of who he is that experience he had as an athlete that brought him into that leadership role.
Absolutely.
That it's a beautiful thing to see. I admire him, so I'm trying to get him to come to Prairie View. I've
Right.
asked him already a couple of times when he can put us on his schedule, because when he speaks to students, it is a beautiful thing to see.
Absolutely. Well, he happens to be my fraternity brother, so
Well, there
maybe
you are. Well,
we,
maybe you should reach out
well,
to
maybe
him.
we'll reach out to him collectively
Okay,
and see
good,
what happens with
good.
that. Now, you made how athletics can be a difference maker for a student to be exposed to an entirely different culture from which they come in. I'm a living example for that. Coming from St. Louis, Missouri, uh, did not know the opportunities that would be forwarded to me by being connected to this university. With that being said, we know that Prairie View produces productive people. There's a high standard that should always be remained. From my understanding now, admissions for incoming freshmen will be at 2.75. Do you see that as a possible hindrance of impacting the athletic aspect of it, or is there a potential waiver where maybe a person can come in and prove that they can work up to that GPA to earn their way on the team that can help the team, or is it just a straight across 275 or nothing at all?
Well, I think first let's talk GPA, because I think that is it's often misunderstood, and let's talk about uh, how universities over time progress. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so the reality is that the better you get as a university, the higher the standards tend to go, because it's a competitive world, and the stronger your profile, the higher achievers want to get in. And the higher achievers often squeeze out people who are at the bottom of that GPA range.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at any university's history in the country that has been on a trajectory of improvement, you'll see that their GPA kind of range has changed.
Mm-hmm.
That's an inevitable thing. And so here's what I love about Prairie View. I've often, when I was in the Ivy League, I often worked hard to make people understand that um, people learn in different ways, and they learn at different times in their lives. And so I began by promoting the idea that the most important thing for Ivy League universities was to make sure that kids from community colleges could advance to the Ivy League. Because what we're saying to people is no matter where you start, you have the opportunity to improve your academic profile by working at it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now I believe that strongly. And as a kid growing up in Fifth Ward, to have the opportunity to move from the Fifth Ward to university life and to keep improving along the way, to me, that's normal. Okay, it shouldn't be thought as so. The way I describe it is that we shouldn't be in the business as universities of simply ratifying people who are already there.
Okay.
Because what is that? If you are only interested in teaching people who have top GPAs, what kind of work is that? What kind of contribution is that? It's not nearly as good a contribution as bringing students along who have not yet been seized of the opportunity to improve their minds.
Okay.
And so my brother tells a wonderful story about being at Prairie View and being completely out of it and not getting the fact that he had to go to classes and that he had to succeed academically. And somebody took him aside and helped him understand that aspect of his life here was going to be important to him later in life. And so that's what we do at Prairie View. We're not trying to say to people who've already achieved to give them a pat on the head. That's not what we're here. We're here to offer opportunity. So from that vantage point, I would say our task is then to make sure that whatever GPA students have, that we're offering opportunities for them to develop. So whatever that profile is, developmental courses, giving people an opportunity to enroll in different ways. There are lots of different things that we can do, not just accept that a student has only done X up to that point and therefore they're doomed forever not to be able to succeed. So I think, just to go back and to summarize, I think Prairie View alums have to get ready for the fact that if we are lucky and we are seen as being a top performer, then the demand is going to increase for students with high academic ability to get into Prairie View. That's inevitable.
Now, with that being said, you have some critics who would believe that it's actually going against the sole intent of why HBCUs such as Prairie View, Texas Southern were developed to begin with,
right,
because of the exclusion.
Understood.
And so how do you respond to that part of it?
Well, how I respond is the way that, as I said, we're working hard now on establishing what we call wraparound services for our students. Now, that's existed other places for a very long time, right? And what that means is you don't posit that everybody who comes into Prairie View should look the following way. That's not the way to do it. Instead, you meet the students where they are. Whatever their need is, that's what you meet.
And that is I'm a perfect example of that. I was sitting out as we were waiting for this meeting, speaking with your receptionist out front, and right on the corner over here from the office where the architect building is right now used to be the president's office. And if you made well on your dean's list, the president's list, you would go and have lunch with the president. And I could remember being blown away. I was afforded that opportunity a couple of times. But here, when I first landed here at Prairie View, I was a kid from the city of St. Louis, Missouri. Didn't even think I was qualified to be in college. But by the time I graduated college, I'm graduating with a 3.17 GPA. I go on to grad school and go on and get my doctorates. But it all started because there was a ground level They gave me the opportunity to believe and develop to know that I did fit. I was a college material individual.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's some of the echoes that, I'm all for the standard. I'm all for the standard because if we don't set a standard, we'll fall for anything.
Mm-hmm.
I get that. And I think it's just the essence of not leaving the opportunity to help those who might need that extra nudge to get over that hump. But when they see that 275 and it just runs them to another direction as a whole, because I know we're up against a growth plan that is essential. And I got a question we'll ask about that in a little
Mm-hmm.
bit, but it's just part of all the culminating factors of bringing it all together.
So keep in mind, again, that opportunity is written into the DNA at Prairie View.
Mm-hmm.
If we ever get away from the idea that we're giving opportunity to kids who otherwise would not have it, we will lose our way. That's very clear. The question of how you maintain the openness to opportunity is something that people will debate. So here, let me give you some examples. Let's say that you have somebody who is come out of high school and they not such a good high school, but they want to do engineering. And yet, at their high school, they didn't have the opportunity to do calculus, didn't have the opportunity to do the basic courses for engineering.
Right.
Or let's take a nursing student who doesn't have the prerequisites to do nursing. So, would you say to them, I'm very sorry, as most universities in the country would, I'm very sorry, but you cannot come here because you just you don't have those courses from your high school, okay? Would you ever do that? So what I'm saying is, no, you wouldn't do that, but you'd find a way to help those students get those prerequisites.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe your state and maybe your accreditors would not permit you to give them credit for high school courses. And therefore, you cannot admit them to teach them high school courses, right?
Right.
So you have to find a way to bring those students into a program that enables them to get ready for that and to be able to fulfill their goals. So when I say wraparound, and when I say we have to meet the students where they are, I'm saying that there shouldn't be necessarily a standard over here, and where you say every single person who comes through these doors must meet the standard. There has to be a vision of how to explain to parents and students how to get into Prairie View and do the work that they want to do at Prairie View and enable them to be able to do it. Now, universities all over the country are doing that today.
Okay.
They're doing it in myriad ways. We haven't caught up to that because we're not doing as many of those kinds of services as many universities are, but we could.
Okay. So in summary, it says it's not necessarily a hard 275. We just have to develop creative ways to get people up to speed on an interim basis, if you could.
There is our state of Texas.
Mm-hmm.
We are a state university.
Yes.
The state of Texas will require us to set a very specific GPA.
Okay.
Okay? That's not within our power to control.
Okay.
Once we do that, what I'm saying, whatever the coordinating board of the state of Texas or the system mandates that we have to do because we're in a particular system, we can find ways to get students ready for whatever the standard is that is set. That's what we have to commit to doing.
Okay.
Not just the fact that, oh dear, we are required to set this GPA and there's nothing we can do about it, but rather what kinds of services can we provide to our students so that we know that we're doing that work of providing opportunity. That kid who is at Wheatley and who doesn't even have access to the things that they need in order to be able to get into Prairie View, what can we do for that kid? I'm saying that if we lose the capacity to be thinking about that, we will lose our way as a university, because our legacy is that is what we provide.
Absolutely, and I think that's the core, is that we don't forget the legacy that helped us. We're standing on shoulders from 1876, where the vision, I can imagine, was that every person that want the opportunity of a higher education
Right.
should be a way to be included.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
well, that's very good, very good. Now, I'm a product of KPVU. I've been in broadcasting for 30 years. Are there any plans of bringing athletics back on the airways of KPVU?
I actually don't. I can't answer that because it's not a discussion that I've had yet. But your question will prompt me to try to open that discussion and see where we are.
Okay,
Yeah.
and my very last question: can we work on getting our original purple and gold back in action on our athletic uniforms?
I know that is a very important question for a lot of people, and I hear that. I hear that at the games, that somehow, people like to do things that are very, what is it, modern, right? And
Mm-hmm.
no matter how precious it is to you, somebody will come along and say, this really needs to be updated. It needs to look a little, jazzier. It needs to be this and that. And of course, I'm of an age now where I am naturally inclined to hate all of that, because I want things that are real. There's so much in life that is totally unreliable.
Right.
You go the next day and you don't know what's going to happen, right?
Right.
Nothing
Right.
is secure. Well, we know that one of the things that is most comforting to our supporters is that we uphold traditions, and especially the strongest traditions. And so we have to look at all of that and make sure that we're not going off in a direction that is somebody's bright idea, but doesn't go back to what our original purpose and our original identity is. So I acknowledge that that's very important.
Yes, ma'am. It's very important, and we want to thank you for the time and opportunity of sitting down with us here at the Open Mic Broadcast Network. Customarily, we give our guests the final thoughts and comments, and we'll now turn it over to you right now.
Well, I mean, I hadn't thought to say anything different from what I've said. I always say that people here at Prairie View haven't the vaguest idea what we have here. It is a treasure. If you start with the legacy of the place, I mean, honestly, to think about how this university came into being, what its purpose was, how it endured over decades of at best uneven treatment. The number of students that it's educated, the success of those students at times when they were not supposed to succeed. When you think about the import of that, I just think that we are stewards of something exceptional, and one of our obligations is to keep in mind that we shouldn't mess it up in our time, because people before us didn't mess it up. And I certainly don't want it to happen under my watch. So it is a precious thing that I appreciate the honor of being here. I appreciate the honor of serving our students, including our wonderful, wonderful athletes. And I hope that everybody will participate in just the enthusiasm of what we can impart to our athletes. I want to see people attending these games more. It upsets me to go to games and to see that they are not as well attended as they should be.
Well, that's a whole nother conversation.
That's a whole other
Yes, ma'am.
conversation. But anyway,
Yes.
so I hope people will go out to the games, because it is an affirmation that we understand our responsibility to that legacy. If we show up at games, if we support the activities that are going on, that's our way of saying, I get it. I get the fact that we have been blessed to have something so rare, so unusual, so beneficial, and I'm doing my part. That's a simple thing that anybody can do. So thank you for coming, and I've enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ruth Simmons, President of Prairie A&M University. I'm the radio guy, Dr. Mike Prince.